She sat in his chair. Not the polite visitor's seat across the desk, not the edge of the conference table, but the deep black leather throne every man in Seoul knew belonged to Kang Tae-jin, the Korean Mafia boss who wore a three-piece suit like armor and signed billion-won deals with the same hand that had once pulled triggers. She opened her laptop, crossed one leg over the other, and began scrolling through his accounts as if she owned the room, while the syndicate lieutenants lining the walls tried not to stare at the black woman who had just broken every rule of hierarchy they understood. The Kang Corporation boardroom sat high above Seoul, wrapped in glass and arrogance. In this world, power had rules. The most important one was simple. No one sat in Kang Tae-jin's seat. Not his executives, not his enemies, not even the politicians who owed him their careers. But on that Monday morning at 9:47 a.m., Naomi Williams did. When the glass doors finally slid open, conversation died in the middle of sentences. Kang Tae-jin walked in like a storm that had decided to wear Tom Ford. 6 feet of controlled danger, dark hair slicked back, expression unreadable. Men who had stared down police raids suddenly found the polished table very interesting. He stopped. He saw her in his chair. He didn't move. Naomi didn't stand. She didn't bow. She finished reading the line on her screen, circled a discrepancy in red ink, and only then looked up at him, as if he were the one interrupting her meeting. "Mr. Kang," she said calmly, "we need to talk about the $53 million that doesn't have a home." The room expected shouting. Instead, he walked around the table and sat down beside her, in the second seat, the one reserved for subordinates. "You're accusing my people of losing $53 million, he said softly, "in my boardroom." "I'm not accusing anyone," Naomi replied. "I'm presenting facts. If you don't like the story they tell, change your behavior, not my audit." For the next 4 hours, she dismantled the fiction of the Kang Corporation's finances. She traced money from shipping subsidiaries in Busan, through shell companies in Luxembourg, into crypto accounts that existed for 9 days and then vanished. The executives squirmed, offered weak explanations, and kept glancing at Tae-jin like children hoping their father would step in. He didn't. He sat perfectly still, listening, absorbing, recalculating everything he thought he knew about his own empire. "Someone in this room," Naomi said, looking each of them in the eye, "has been skimming from this company for years. The rest of you either helped or were too incompetent to notice. Either way, my report will say exactly that." The CFO went gray. The COO tried to stand and argue, but one small gesture from Tae-jin put him back in his chair. "Finish your audit, Ms. Williams," Tae-jin said at last. "You have full access. Every file, every account, every employee. Find my money." "Our money," Naomi corrected. "Shareholder money, including pension funds and a children's hospital endowment. So yes, I'll find it. And when I do, everyone involved is going to prison." She started gathering her things. "Ms. Williams," he said, stopping her at the door, "no one has spoken to me like this in 15 years. The last person who tried is under a parking garage in Incheon. Why aren't you afraid?" Naomi gave him a small, dangerous smile. "Because every second of this meeting has already been recorded and backed up to 3 secure servers. If anything happens to me, regulators on 2 continents get everything. Also, my security team has this building under surveillance, and they're better armed than your people." Her heels clicked across the marble as she walked out. Behind her, there was silence. And then, something no one expected. Kang Tae-jin laughed. Not kindly, not softly, but with the sharp amusement of a man who'd finally met someone playing the game at his level. That was the day a black auditor refused to bow to the Korean Syndicate. But that was only the beginning. Over the next days, Seoul watched the quiet war unfold. The morning after that boardroom clash, Naomi walked out of her hotel to find a brand new Mercedes Maybach S-Class parked in front. Keys on the hood. A handwritten note resting beside them. A vehicle worthy of your standards. TK. The valet kept waiting for her to scream, or cry, or at least smile. Naomi took one photo of the car, one of the note, and one of the plate. Then she called a tow truck. By afternoon, the Maybach was donated through a dealer to a women's shelter. She emailed his office one simple message with an attached invoice. Your depreciation schedule is off by 3%, invoice attached. NW. The next morning, she opened her hotel door and froze. Her entire suite was filled with white orchids, thousands of them. On tables, on the floor, by the window, spilling out of the bathroom, an ocean of pale petals and soft perfume. One small card, you deserve beauty. TK. Naomi didn't swoon. She picked up the card, took a picture, and spent the next few hours on the phone. By evening, every major hospital in Seoul had fresh orchids brightening their lobbies and nurses' stations. She sent him a corrected tax form. You can write it off as a charitable donation. I fixed the numbers. You're welcome. Your quarterly projections are still fiction. NW. Day 3, he stopped playing. When she returned to her room that night, a black briefcase sat on her bed. Inside, $10 million in bearer bonds gleamed in neat stacks. No names, no traces, just money and a letter written on heavy cream paper. Ms. Williams, you have made your point. You are extraordinary, uncompromising, and incorruptible. Accept this token of my respect and walk away from this audit. Your fee will be paid in full. You will have no further involvement in matters that could become complicated. I am not accustomed to asking twice. Respectfully, Kang Tae-jin. Most people would have seen a life-changing exit. Naomi saw evidence. She photographed every bond, logged every serial number, and put the entire thing into an encrypted report. The briefcase went back to his office unopened, with a yellow sticky note attached. I don't accept bribes. I don't take shortcuts. And I don't walk away. P.S. Bond serial numbers reported to FinCEN. Your cost-benefit analysis is weak. NW. That night, she was still at Kang Corporation long after the building had emptied. She had turned a spare conference room into a command center. Laptops, printouts, flowcharts mapping money as if it were a living organism trying to escape. Her security detail checked in, then stepped back. They knew the routine. She liked to work alone. When the numbers started talking, the door opened without a knock. Naomi didn't look up. People came and went all day. But the air changed. Heavier, quieter. Kang Tae-jin walked in alone. No bodyguards, no assistants, no entourage. Just him. And a bottle of whiskey that probably cost more than her first car. He poured 2 glasses, set one in front of her, and took the seat across from her as if he belonged there. You're working late, he observed. Your books don't audit themselves, she replied, eyes on the screen. And someone has been very creative with your subsidiaries. I'm almost impressed. Whoever built this understands corporate finance at a graduate level. That would be me, he said. Wharton, finance and strategic management. She paused, genuinely surprised, then looked up at him properly. You designed this fraud yourself? I designed a system to protect my family's transition, he said. My grandfather sold bodies and drugs. My father sold weapons and politicians. I'm trying to build something my children won't have to wash blood off to inherit. Whether that counts as fraud depends on which laws you think matter more. Naomi leaned back, studying him like a complicated spreadsheet. So the missing $53 million, she said slowly, isn't just greed, it's bribes, quiet settlements, buying peace so you can go legitimate. Exactly, he replied. You don't climb out of hell by filling in forms, Ms. Williams. You burn what needs burning and pay who needs paying. And you think I should just ignore 53 million in criminal activity because your intentions are noble? I think you understand the world isn't as clean as your spreadsheets, he said, and I think you're testing me to see if I'll lie. He was right. She already knew most of where the money had gone. She'd been waiting to see if he'd double down on the fiction or tell the ugly truth. The acquisition dies with this much unexplained capital movement, Naomi said. No regulator signs it. Your legitimate businessman story collapses. If you want this to go through, we have to rebuild everything from the ground up, legally. We? He repeated quietly. I'm a forensic accountant, she said. I find money and fix broken systems. Your books are broken. If you want them fixed, really fixed, then yes, we. She pushed the untouched whiskey back toward him. But I need complete honesty. Every account, every off-book soldier, every dirty payment. And you need to accept that this will hurt. Real legitimacy requires real sacrifice. He walked to the window, looking out over Seoul's glittering night, a kingdom he'd inherited in blood and wanted to leave in something better. My grandfather would have you killed for this, he said. My father would call you naive. But me. He turned, and for the first time she saw something like hope in his eyes. I think you might be exactly what I need to become a man my future children wouldn't be ashamed of. He came back to the table and held out his hand. Partners, he said. Equal authority, complete transparency, real change. People will die. Fortunes will be lost. There will be nights when the old ways look easier and safer. In those moments, I need you strong enough to keep me honest. Naomi shook his hand, feeling the calluses of violence and the strength of someone who had survived too much. In those moments, she said, remember this. An empire built on blood isn't worth leaving behind. The one we build now, that's the only one that matters. Their handshake held a little too long to be purely professional. It wasn't romance. Not yet. It was recognition. Two people who had lived their lives refusing to compromise, suddenly standing on the same side. Over the next 6 months, they went to war together. Naomi dismantled and rebuilt the Kang Corporation's finances like a general tearing down a corrupt regime and building a new government in its place. Shell companies were dissolved, illegal accounts closed, employees interviewed, judged, and either moved into legitimate roles or gently pushed out with severance packages that doubled as hush money. Rival organizations smelled weakness and attacked. She bankrupted 2 of them using financial warfare so elegant they never saw her hand. The third tried to negotiate. She turned them into a merger that strengthened the legitimate side of the empire. Board members who resisted found themselves facing investigations into their private assets. Investigations Naomi had quietly prepared months before they ever thought about betraying the transition. Through all of it, she and Tae-jin worked 16-hour days side by side. He understood the human cost of every number she moved. She understood the legal cost of every decision he made. They argued. They challenged each other. They refused to let the other settle for good enough. Slowly, the empire changed. The Wall Street Journal finally noticed and ran a front-page story. Korean giant breaks from criminal past, the auditor who changed everything. The article named Naomi as the architect of the transformation. Business schools wanted case studies. Regulators quietly dropped old investigations. New investors poured in, hungry for a cleaned-up monster they could publicly support. Naomi turned down every job offer. She stayed in Seoul. Not because she needed the money, because somewhere between threatening to dismantle his world and helping him rebuild it, the work stopped feeling like an engagement and started feeling like a calling. And somewhere in those endless nights of numbers and negotiations, something else shifted too. For him, The moment was simple. He could trace it back exactly, to the second she sat in his chair and refused to move. For her, it was slower. 1,000 small decisions where he chose the harder, cleaner road. Until one day she realized she no longer saw a criminal trying to stay out of prison. She saw a man trying, desperately, to be worthy of a future that didn't smell like smoke and blood. But before either of them could name what was growing between them, the past pushed back. Because you cannot take $53 million away from the shadows, without the shadows trying to take something back. And that's when the lights went out. If you're still listening at this point, let me know in the comments. Would you have taken the money and walked away, or stayed like Naomi and risked everything? The attack started with something simple. The lights went out. 1 second, Naomi and Taejin were standing over a glowing map of accounts and shell companies. The next, the entire floor dropped into blackness so complete it felt physical. For half a heartbeat, the only sound was the hum of servers and their own breathing. Then the emergency lighting kicked in. Red, dim, like the whole building had slipped into war mode. Naomi's phone buzzed in her pocket at the exact same time. Her eyes didn't leave him as she pulled it out. One secure notification glowed on the screen from her security team. Hostile movement. 5 vehicles, armed, evacuate now. Outside the glass, she could see the Seoul skyline still shining, but their block was dead. Their building, and only their building, had been surgically cut from the grid. "This isn't a power outage," Naomi said quietly. "It's a message." Beside her, the shift in Kang Tae-jin was instant. The corporate CEO vanished. The syndicate boss stepped forward. His hand went to the weapon at his side with the kind of practiced ease that doesn't come from theory. "Stay behind me," he said. "Not a chance," Naomi shot back. She was already at her laptop, fingers flying over the keys, patching into her private network. Multiple security feeds popped onto the screens. 3 vehicles in the parking garage, 2 at the main entrance, 12 men minimum, automatic weapons. Their formation is professional, military or ex-military. She glanced at him. "Someone really wants me dead. Or they want to send me a message," he replied, phone already at his ear. He rattled off commands in rapid Korean, calling in his own people, locking down floors, activating protocols he'd hoped he would never use again. "There's a private elevator in my office," he said. "We can—" "No." Naomi cut him off. "Look at the deployment pattern. They're not covering the obvious exits. They're covering your escape routes. The private elevator, the executive parking, the helipad. This is too clean, too informed." She switched cameras, tracing how the attackers moved through shadows and blind spots that shouldn't exist. "Someone inside your organization gave them your emergency layout," she said. "This isn't just an attack. It's an inside job." He went very still. "Explain." Naomi pulled up 3 feeds at once: garage entrance, lobby, executive corridor. Her brain processed them the way it processed complex financial fraud, looking for patterns, weak points, tells. "See here?" she said. "They're ignoring the main stairwells. They're going straight to the secondary access points, the ones only senior security and family would know. Whoever planned this knows your playbook." The implication hung between them like a blade. "Who knew the full details of your emergency protocols?" Naomi asked. "My head of security," he said slowly. "My CFO, and my cousin Jae-sung, who runs Southeast Asia." Naomi didn't hesitate. "Your CFO nearly had a heart attack in the boardroom," she said. "That fear was real. Your head of security immediately deployed your people the second you called. If he wanted you dead, he would have hesitated." She turned to face him fully. "That leaves your cousin." Gunfire cracked in the distance, short, controlled bursts from the lower floors. The reinforced glass of his office trembled. "They're already in the building," Naomi said. He moved. fast. He crossed to the wall, pressed a hidden panel, and revealed a narrow maintenance corridor. "Emergency passage," he said. "Most people don't know about it." "Your cousin does," she replied. "Probably," he agreed. "But he doesn't know what I keep in my office safe." They slipped into the corridor as more gunshots echoed, closer now, followed by the heavy thud of doors taking hits. The red glow of the emergency system painted everything in blood-colored light. "Your backup files," he said as they moved. "The recordings you threatened me with. Are they actually secure?" "Distributed servers across 4 continents," Naomi said. "Military-grade encryption. Dead man switches if I don't check in. Even if they kill me tonight, the data lives." He looked at her sideways. "You came into my world prepared to die?" "I came into your world prepared for you to try and stop me," she said simply. "That's not the same thing." They reached his office, bigger than some apartments. Wall of glass over Seoul, shelves and art that screamed old money. In one corner, behind a painting, sat a safe. He opened it fast, like he'd done it 100 times with a gun at his back. Inside, a slim laptop, hard drives, and a weapon that belonged more on a battlefield than in a boardroom. Naomi arched an eyebrow. "That's not standard corporate equipment." "Insurance," he said. He booted the laptop, connected to a closed network. The screen lit up with files, photos, and intercepted messages. "For 8 months," he said, "I've been tracking Jae-sung. Separate accounts, private communications, side deals with organizations I made peace with years ago." Naomi stepped closer, scanning the data. Names, transfers, dates. "He's been working with your rivals," she said. "Taking money from the same accounts I've been chasing and feeding it into his own network." "You thought it was just fraud." "And you think it's something worse," he said. "War funding," she replied. "He's building his own empire inside yours, and tonight is his opening move." The door to Naomi's temporary office, down the hall, exploded under a concentrated blast. They heard it even in his suite. Then came the sound of smashing glass, overturned furniture, men shouting in a language Naomi's security feed had already flagged. "They're destroying my equipment," she said. "They want the audit gone." "They want you gone first," he said. He reached into the safe, pulled out another gun, and held it out to her. "Do you know how to use this?" Naomi checked the magazine, chambered around, flicked off the safety in one smooth motion. "Range time twice a week for 6 years," she said. "You're not the first dangerous client I've had." For the first time that night, he smiled. It was small and rough and almost proud. "Extraordinary," he murmured. Gunfire now echoed closer. The building itself seemed to vibrate with every impact. Somewhere below them, his own men were engaging, but the pattern on the feeds was clear. The attackers weren't there to win a full war. They were there for a surgical strike. "Objective is the executive level," Naomi said, scanning a camera feed. "Objective is us." He typed quickly, pulling up more evidence on Jae-sung, diagrams of side operations, secret meetings, cash movements that matched Naomi's earlier findings. "I've been documenting his betrayal," Taejin said. "I knew he was moving against me. I just didn't think he'd be stupid enough to attack my building during an international audit." "He's not stupid," Naomi said. "He's desperate. If this audit finishes, you walk into legitimacy with clean numbers. He becomes just another cousin on payroll. Easy to cut loose. This attack isn't about you. It's about stopping me from sealing the transition." He looked up at her. "You think this is your war?" "I think I walked into an empire in the middle of a civil war," she replied. "You just didn't want to admit it." Outside the office, boot steps pounded closer. A team moved methodically down the hall, checking rooms, clearing spaces. "For the record," Naomi said, "if we survive this, I want a hazard bonus." "Done," he said. Red light flashed at the top of the door, someone trying to override the lock. Naomi glanced at him. You ready to see if all that reformed talk holds up under actual gunfire, Mr. Kang? He stepped between her and the door, gun steady in his hand. I was a criminal before I was a CEO, he said. I know exactly who I am in a fight. The lock gave way with a sharp metallic snap. The door swung open. And for the first time since she'd met him, Naomi didn't watch his face as he dealt with danger. She watched his back. Because in that moment, under red lights, with bullets in the walls and betrayal all around, there was no line between them anymore. The black auditor who refused to bow, and the Korean Mafia boss trying to become something else. They were just two people in the same kill box, fighting the same enemy. And when the smoke from that night finally cleared, there would be no more pretending this was just about an audit. It was about who would control the future of his empire. The cousin who wanted the old world back, or the woman who walked in, sat in his chair, and refused to be scared. If you're still here with Naomi and Tae-jin after that attack, tell me in the comments. Do you think a man with this past deserves a second chance? Or would you walk away from him forever? The worst part wasn't the bullets. It was the silence afterward. Sirens wailed in the distance. The building smelled like gunpowder and fear. Security teams moved through the corridors, clearing rooms, checking bodies. Some theirs, some not. Naomi sat on the edge of a table in Tae-jin's office, shirt torn at the cuff, a thin line of blood along her arm where a fragment of glass had caught her. Her hands didn't shake, but her jaw was tight. Her laptop, somehow still alive, sat open in front of her. On the screen, numbers, names, accounts, evidence. Across from her, Kang Tae-jin stood at the window, looking down at the cluster of emergency vehicles gathering below. Police, ambulances, unmarked cars that belonged to people who wore suits, not uniforms. They'll want a story, Naomi said quietly. Tonight can't just disappear. He didn't turn. Do you trust me to tell it? I trust facts, she said. So let's give them facts they can live with. She turned the laptop so he could see. Your cousin has been stealing from you for 6 years, she said. 5 to 8 million a year. Every time you made a move toward legitimacy, he used the same channels to fund people who wanted the old world back. She tapped the screen. These transfers line up with attacks on your allies, leaks to regulators, pressure on politicians who suddenly turned cold on you. He's been fighting your transition with your own money. Tae-jin finally moved away from the window and came to stand beside her. His face looked carved from stone, but his eyes burned. Can you build a case? He asked. I already have, Naomi said. Financially, he's dead. What you do with that? She met his eyes. That's on you. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he took out his phone and made a call. Bring him up, he said. Alone, and tell the others to clear the floor. Naomi closed the laptop and slid off the table. I'm staying, she said. You shouldn't, he replied. If you want legitimacy, she said, you don't handle this the old way. And you're going to need someone in the room to make sure you don't forget that. He gave her a look that was half irritation, half something like gratitude. Fine, he said, but if he tries anything, I'll shoot, she said simply. Relax. The elevator ride up for Jae-sung was the longest of his life. He walked into the office with a split lip, his expensive suit smudged with dust and someone else's blood. He tried to straighten his tie when he saw Naomi, then thought better of it. Hyung, he started, forcing a smile. I came as soon as I heard. Are you… Stop, Tae-jin said. One word. The fake concern died on Jae-sung's face. Naomi watched the shift with professional detachment. She'd seen it before. On executives cornered by evidence. the moment they realized Charm had run out of road. "We were attacked tonight," Taejin said. "They cut power to my building, went straight for my auditor and my office. They knew my emergency protocols, my escape routes, my timing." His cousin spread his hands. "Then we have a leak in security. Naomi opened the laptop and turned it toward him. "Funny thing," she said. "Every time there's an attack, an intimidation attempt, or a leak that hurts his transition, money moves out of these accounts." She tapped a line of entries. "And every one of those accounts traces back to you, Mr. Kang Jae-sung." He laughed. Too loud, too quickly. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Creative accounting from some foreign consultant. You don't know how things are done here." "I know how numbers work," Naomi said. "And numbers don't care about your flag." She clicked another folder. "Payments to your so-called logistics partners line up perfectly with known movements of a rival organization you were supposed to have peace with. Funny coincidence." His eyes flicked to Taejin, calculating. "Hyung," he said smoothly, switching to Korean. "She's twisting things. I've only done what was necessary to protect us, to keep our options open in case this fantasy of legitimacy failed." Naomi didn't interrupt. She watched the conversation in their mother tongue, heard the words family, loyalty, blood. Then she cut in Korean that was accented but precise. "Loyalty doesn't mean stealing from your own," she said, "and it doesn't mean hiring men to kill the one person who can keep this company out of prison." He stared at her, caught off guard by the language, and by the fact that she understood more than he'd assumed. "You think you can walk into our world and tell us how to run it?" He spat in English. "You don't belong here." Naomi's voice stayed calm. "I don't want to belong to your old world," she said. "I'm here to build the new one he claims he wants." She turned to Taejin. "This is the moment," she said quietly. "You can prove you meant everything you told me, or you can prove tonight was just another performance." The room seemed to shrink to the distance between the two men. In the old world, this conversation would have ended with a gunshot and another quiet grave. No paper trail, no questions. Just a cousin who disappeared and money that quietly found a new owner. But there was a black auditor in the room now, and she was watching. "Jae-sung," Taejin said slowly, "you took my money, my plans, my peace agreement, and you used them to start a war behind my back." His cousin's mask cracked. "I did what you were too weak to do," he snapped. "Our grandfather would spit on you. You let an outsider sit in your chair. You let her cut our power. You let her tell you what to do." "Grandfather is dead," Taejin said, voice suddenly cold. "And if I keep living the way he did, I might as well be buried next to him." He stepped closer, so they were almost nose to nose. "You call me weak," he said, "because I don't want my children to grow up with blood on their hands. I call you a coward because you couldn't build anything new, so you tried to drag us back." Jae-sung's hand twitched, just enough for Naomi to see it. A subtle shift toward his jacket. Her own hand moved faster. "Don't," she said sharply. Her gun was out, steady, aimed center mass before his fingers even brushed the fabric. For the second time in his life, Jae-sung underestimated her. "You bring a foreign auditor," he hissed. "You give her a gun. You let her threaten family?" "I gave her a gun," Taejin said, "because she's the only person in this building I trust to point it in the right direction." Something in his tone made Jae-sung freeze. "I should kill you," Taejin said quietly. "For the men who died tonight. For the ones you paid to come after us. For every time you took my name and used it to do something I would never allow." Naomi didn't say a word. She watched his profile, listened to his breathing, waited. "But if I do," he continued, "I stay exactly who I've always been. A man who solves problems with bodies. A man my future children would fear, not respect." He stepped back. "No," he said. "You don't die in a hallway for me, cousin. You live in a courtroom." That was the line, the one that could never be uncrossed. Naomi lowered her gun by a fraction, not in mercy, but in acknowledgement. "I can build the case," she said. "If I turn over what I have to the right people, they will bury him under paperwork and time." "And the company?" he asked. "If we move fast," she said, "we can frame this as you exposing internal corruption, not covering it up. It will hurt. Investors will panic. Regulators will circle. But it will also cement your transition. You won't just be the gangster who got away with it. You'll be the man who cut out his own rot." For a long second, he just looked at her. Then he nodded. "Do it," he said. He turned to security, who'd been waiting just out of sight, tense and ready. "Take him," Taejin ordered. "No deals, no back channels. Deliver him exactly where Ms. Williams tells you to." The fight for his empire had finally come into the light. Later, when they were alone again, Naomi stood by the same window he'd stared out of so many nights. The city glittered like nothing bad ever happened there. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Regret not killing him?" he said. "Or regret letting you see that I wanted to?" "Both," she said. He considered it. "I regret that I didn't stop him sooner," he said at last. "I regret that men died tonight because I was busy pretending the transition was cleaner than it was." He looked at her, and for once, there was no mask at all. "But I don't regret choosing your way," he said. "If I'm going to be dragged through hell, I want there to be a point to it." Naomi nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow," she said, "we start writing the story the world gets to see. Because this wasn't just the night they almost died together. It was the night the old Kang Empire died, and the new one finally had a chance to be born." Quick question for you before we jump into the rebuild. Would you listen to a whole spin-off about the cousins' trial and downfall, or do you prefer we stay focused only on Naomi and Taejin's love story? Your answer in the comments helps me choose what to write next. The morning after the attack, Seoul woke up to headlines. Not about gunfire, not about a gang war, about a major internal fraud exposure at Kang Corporation. Naomi had spent the night doing what she did best, turning chaos into a narrative that the regulators, investors, and the public could live with. Numbers, timelines, statements. She stitched it all together so that the first thing the world saw wasn't scandal, but accountability. Officially, the story was simple. The company's leadership, led by Chairman Kang Tae-jin, had uncovered a long-running embezzlement and sabotage scheme orchestrated by a high-ranking relative. The perpetrator had been detained and handed over to authorities, along with unprecedented evidence. Unofficially, everyone knew there was more, but the evidence was so thorough, the confession so complete, the cooperation so immediate, that even the most cynical regulators couldn't pretend it wasn't a turning point. From that day, the work changed. It stopped being just about cleaning numbers. It became about designing a whole new skeleton for the empire. Naomi led a full forensic sweep. Any account that smelled even slightly dirty was either shut down or rebuilt from scratch. Old cash. Businesses became legitimate subsidiaries, with tax IDs, HR policies, and audit trails that could withstand any inspection. Some days felt like surgery. Other days felt like demolition. Departments vanished. Others doubled in size. People who had grown rich in the shadows found themselves signing compliance training forms and answering to people half their age, and 10 times more honest. They didn't all stay. Some quit, taking buyouts and disappearing quietly into countries with weak extradition treaties. Others stayed and adapted, discovering that legitimate money might be slower. But it didn't come with the same nightmares. Through it all, Naomi and Taejin were constant. In meetings, they presented a united front, She spoke the language of regulators, investors, and ethics committees. He spoke the language of strategy, loyalty, and risk. Behind closed doors, they fought. Not with weapons. Those days were over. With spreadsheets and scenarios, shouting sometimes, cold, silence other times. You can't keep that division, Naomi would say, stabbing a number on the screen. It's too close to your old operations. One leak, and everything we've built goes up in smoke. If I cut them all loose at once, he'd argue, we destabilize the whole region. You think the men replacing me will be more ethical? So they negotiated. They found middle roads. They shut down some things immediately. They phased out others. Sometimes Naomi won. Sometimes he did. And little by little, something impossible happened. The Kang Corporation started to be known less as that company with rumors, and more as that insane turnaround story where the gangster actually went legit. Business schools called. Journalists requested interviews. Politicians who used to avoid him now wanted to be photographed shaking his hand. He refused most of it. Naomi refused all of it. Let the numbers talk, she said. They're better PR than any interview. 6 months later, the numbers screamed. Legitimate revenue up, illegal revenue down to zero on paper, and down to a trickle in reality, shrinking by the day. Stock price climbing, compliance ratings glowing. The empire was changing. So were they. Late nights in the war room grew quieter. Less crisis, more planning. Sometimes they even laughed. Real laughter. The kind that surprised both of them when it escaped. He started bringing coffee instead of whiskey. She started drinking it without insult. He learned that she hummed under her breath when she was close to cracking something big. She learned that he stopped talking and stared out the window when he was trying not to make a choice that felt like betrayal to his past. There were moments, like the evening they finished shutting down the last legacy operation. It had taken months of negotiation, preparation, and sheer stubbornness. When Naomi clicked the final confirmation, there was no explosion, no fireworks, just a quiet line disappearing from the system. That's it, she said softly. The last piece of your grandfather's empire, gone. He sat back, exhaling slowly. My grandfather built his life on that route, he said. My father expanded it. 3 generations of Kangs used it to become untouchable. Naomi looked at him. And now? She asked. He turned his chair to face her fully. And now, he said, I'd rather be touchable. And clean. She didn't say anything. She just nodded, and for once, didn't follow it with a demand or a warning. That night, they walked out of the office together. Their security teams kept a respectful distance, and for the first time, the distance between them didn't feel like a wall. It took almost a year to fully rebuild the empire. On the 1-year anniversary of the day she'd first sat in his chair, the boardroom looked different. Some faces were gone, retired, forced out, or under indictment. New ones sat in their place, younger, sharper, the kind of executives who talked about ESG scores and sustainable growth instead of protection and territory. The big acquisition that had started everything was finally ready to close. Regulators had signed off. Investors were watching. Journalists were circling. The room was full. Lawyers, bankers, advisors, all waiting for the final signatures. Before anyone could begin, Kang Tae-jin stood. I have an announcement about our leadership structure, he said. The room fell quiet. He gestured to Naomi, who stood at the far end of the table in a deep burgundy suit, calm and composed as always. As of today, he said, Naomi Williams is promoted from Chief Financial Officer to Co-Chief Executive Officer of Kang Corporation. She will have equal authority with me on all strategic decisions and full operational control over finance, legal, and compliance. The reaction was instant. Some people applauded. Some exchanged shocked glances. Some didn't move at all, but their eyes said everything. Co-CEOs were rare anywhere. In Korean chaebol culture, they were almost unheard of. A foreign black woman sharing power at the top of one of the country's largest conglomerates? Unthinkable. And yet, there she was. Not apologizing. Not shrinking. Standing next to the man whose empire she had nearly destroyed, and then helped rebuild. She met his eyes across the table. He gave the smallest nod, a private acknowledgement. She returned it, just once. The deal went through. Contracts signed, hands shaken, cameras flashed. By the time the last lawyer left the building, it was already dark. Naomi returned to her office, the one that had once been a temporary war room and was now permanently hers. Papers lay in neat stacks. A single lamp threw a warm pool of light over her desk. He was already there, standing by the window, looking out over Seoul like he always did when too much had happened. Tired of the view, yet? She asked, setting her briefcase down. Never, he said. But I thought it might look different tonight. She joined him, standing at the glass. Below them, the city moved on. Taxis, street vendors, office workers, families. Each living their own small dramas, unaware of the empire that had quietly changed the rules above their heads. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. You could have gone anywhere, worked for anyone. Instead, you tied yourself to a reformed criminal and a company that will always have people waiting for it to fail. Naomi thought about all the offers she'd turned down, the comfortable jobs, the clean reputations, the easy money. I regret the simpler life I could have had, she said honestly. I regret the sleep I didn't get, the vacations I didn't take. She glanced at him. But regret isn't the same as wishing I'd chosen differently, she added. This. She nodded at the building around them, the city, the numbers on her screen. This is the most meaningful work I've ever done. We didn't just clean up a company, Tae-jin. We proved that transformation is possible. He turned to face her fully. For once, he let every wall drop. And us? He asked. The partnership between a gangster trying to go straight and an auditor who refuses to compromise? Naomi met his gaze, steady. We're proof that the most unlikely partnerships can be the strongest, she said. And that professional respect can become something deeper, without losing its edge. He laughed softly, a real laugh, not sharp or bitter. Are you saying you've developed feelings for me, Ms. Williams? She rolled her eyes, but her voice softened. I'm saying that somewhere between threatening to destroy your empire and helping you save it, I stopped seeing you as just another corrupt executive who needed correction. She took a breath. I started seeing you as a man who wants to be better than his circumstances, she said. Someone willing to sacrifice what's easy for what's right. I respect you. I admire you. And I think we could be extraordinary together, professionally and personally. The room went quiet in that way it does, when nothing outside it matters anymore. He stepped closer, lifting a hand to her face. His touch was gentle, too gentle for hands that had done what his had done. I've been in love with you since the moment you sat in my chair and refused to move, he said. I've spent a year trying to be a man you could stand beside without shame, building an empire you could be proud to help lead. He swallowed, then said it like a contract. I'm offering you everything. My company, my future, my heart. Equal. Not as someone I own, not as someone I protect, but as someone I build with. Naomi had spent her life making decisions with data, not emotion. But there were no spreadsheets for this. No models. Only truth. And the truth was, she had found something she didn't even know she was looking for. A partnership of absolute equals, where power didn't have to mean control, where love didn't require losing herself. Yes, she said simply. Their kiss was not a fairy tale first kiss. It was the kiss of two people who had already fought a war together, already seen each other at their worst, already chosen each other in boardrooms and backrooms and emergency corridors. When they finally pulled apart, both a little breathless, Naomi laughed softly. "You know the tabloids are going to have a field day," she said. "Reformed gangster falls for the accountant who dismantled his empire." "Let them," he replied, pulling her close again. "They can write whatever they want about our past. We'll be too busy building the future." They turned back to the window, this time standing together, his arm around her waist, her head against his shoulder, as Seoul kept moving, unaware. Somewhere down there, people still believed that empires built in blood could never change. Up here, a black auditor and a Korean former mafia boss had already proved them wrong. So if anyone ever tells you people like him can't change, or women like her shouldn't sit in chairs like his, remember Naomi Williams, the black auditor who sat in the Korean mafia boss's throne and made him build an empire worthy of her. If you enjoyed this Afro-Korean mafia love story, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you want early access, bonus episodes, and members-only polls where you help me choose the next storyline, tap Join to become a channel member. Your support helps me keep creating these long, detailed stories for you.